Hello and welcome to our second question time for our Jesus, Gender and Sexuality series. Hello Tom.
Hello Anton.
Good to have you along.
Thank you.
Thanks for answering questions for us following your sermon on sex and marriage. Let's get to it. So first question, a lot of questions came through. One question is, in the talk you said faithfully following Jesus as an unmarried person will mean abstaining from sexual intimacy. Does sexual intimacy have to be between two people?
Yeah, when I use that phrase, sexual intimacy, I'm talking about something that happens between two people. But wanting to include intimacy that involves someone who's on the other side of a screen, someone who's in an image, someone who's in a mental fantasy, that's what I think unmarried people are called to abstain from. Unmarried people's sexuality in general is a broader topic that more could be said about. In one of the videos referenced in this week's Bible study session, there's some material that I think is helpful in this regard. And also in this Sunday's sermon, Viv's going to be talking about intimacy as a broader concept, and I think that will be helpful as well.
Yeah. So it's not merely sexual intimacy, is not just if the other person's right there next to you, but involving someone else in any other way in sexual activity. Great, that's helpful. A couple of questions about the idea of husbands being in a stronger position. So you delved into the differences between husband and wife a little bit in the sermon. You said, one person asked in the questions, is this about roles in marriage? If so, why are men in the position of superiority? Aren't we all made equal and therefore don't differ in our roles within our marriage? And another asked, as a wife, does my vulnerability outweigh any strength I may have? So thinking about what is strength and weakness in between husband and wife.
Yeah, so like I said in the talk, this is a challenging and controversial area. The Bible passages we're talking about here are ones like Ephesians 5, Colossians 3, 1 Peter 3, the household codes in the New Testament where the writers give different instructions to different people. So those passages are the authority here, rather than whatever I say. And I want to recognise that over the years those passages have been applied in various ways and sometimes applied really badly, to be honest. I'm reminded that even the devil can quote isolated Bible verses to suit his purposes. So in Sunday's talk, I didn't get into those passages in detail. It was already a long enough talk. What I wanted to try and do is to help us approach those passages in a certain way. Often when we come to those passages, we think that they're talking about who should be the boss. But actually, I don't think that's the main idea. I think these passages are really trying to talk about how two people who are already different should embrace the unity of marriage. So to answer one of the specific questions, in the talk when I used that phrase, a stronger position, I was referring to biology, the bodily experience of husbands relative to wives. I wasn't talking about roles in marriage. I'm not even sure that roles is a good framework for these kinds of discussions, actually. But I didn't just want to say that husbands are stronger. I don't think it's quite that simple. That's often true in terms of physical strength, but not always. On the other hand, when it comes to perseverance or mental stamina, inner strength, I suspect the average woman is stronger than the average man in that regard.
Yeah, so there's different types of strength.
Different types of strength we're trying to tease out here. When we look at the embodied experience of males generally versus females generally, there is, as I was saying, the vulnerability that comes from childbirth and all the things leading up to that and following on from that is unique to wives. And so I think that's in the picture here. And one way to suggest is that this pre-existing difference in circumstances lies behind a lot of the different instructions to husbands and wives we find in the Bible. Husbands and wives on average will face different temptations which can undermine or deny the unity of marriage. So if you're the person in a more vulnerable position, you're more in danger of retreating and undermining, distrusting, and ignoring the unity of marriage in that way. If you're a person in a less vulnerable position, if we put it that way, that makes you perhaps more in danger of taking advantage of your partner, exploiting, dominating. But those different exhortations given to each partner actually have the common goal of leaning into the unity of the marriage. So that's what I was trying to get at in that section on husbands and wives.
Yeah, it's all part of the differences that make up to the signpost that marriage is, in terms of God is someone who's in a position of strength compared to us. We're more vulnerable because we're his creatures, and yet he unites us with himself in the person of Jesus. And marriage as husband and wife are united as well, are meant to be a picture, a signpost towards that. So, very helpful. Thank you very much. Another purpose, one of the purposes of marriage and sex that you gave us on Sunday was of course children, bearing children. But one of the questions was, is child rearing an essential part of marriage? Should you get married if you don't want or you can't have children?
So there's two aspects to that question. If we think first about those who can't have kids, which let's acknowledge can be a pretty heartbreaking experience. Kids are not the point of marriage. The point of marriage, as we've been saying, is that unity that points to the unity of Jesus and his church. And children are frequently an expression or a fruit of that unity. But the unity exists regardless of whether children come. So I'd say that someone who is medically unable to have kids should still feel entirely free to get married. And this is a point where the fully biblical view of marriage differs from some of those fake Christian views that say that really children are the whole point.
But what about those who may not want to have kids? What should they do if they're thinking about getting married?
So what's fascinating about this question is that it's a question that could only be asked from the 20th century onwards. We're in this pretty unique period of history where having sex and having kids can be completely distinct questions. When we look at Genesis 2:24, like we did on Sunday, I do think we get the picture that God intended the gift of sex and the gift of children to be received together as a package over the lifetime of a marriage. And so I think the call on married people is to be ready to receive those gifts as a package deal. That of course doesn't mean we need to pop out a baby every year, like in years past. And so if someone is 100% committed to being childless for life, I don't think getting married is appropriate. But I don't know the age of the person asking this question. When Vanessa and I got married, we were 24, and we didn't feel like having kids anytime soon. Over time, that changed. Of course, when you get married and start having sex, anything can happen. No contraception is 100% effective, so we need our eyes open to that. But if you're in your 20s, I think it's fine to get married with the intention that kids are for a fair bit further down the track rather than straight away. And with the assumption that your interest in kids will grow over time.
All right, very helpful. We had a few questions relating to the signpost about marriage being a signpost. One of the questions was, can a Christian gay couple not also be a positive signpost, highlighting God's goodness and love to those around them? So he said that marriage between a man and a woman is a signpost to something. What about a gay couple?
So obviously every individual Christian person can be a signpost pointing to God's goodness and love. And all kinds of different human relationships can illustrate commitment and faithfulness and love, parent-child relationships, sibling relationships, strong friendships and so on. But when we talk about the biblical idea of marriage as a signpost, it's not a signpost to God's goodness and love in general, but it's a signpost to the union of Christ with his church. We get this signpost idea from that bit near the end of Ephesians 5, where it says, the two will become one flesh. This is a profound mystery, but I'm talking about Christ and the church. And so it's pointing particularly to the union between Christ and his church, two who are different becoming united. And for this reason, we'd say a union between two humans who are the same can't illustrate that kind of union.
Well, okay, another signpost question. If marriage is a signpost to unity with Christ, that's kind of what you're saying, it's more us being united with Christ. What does it mean for how we relate to non-Christians? no one outside the church looks at a Christian marriage and thinks, oh, Jesus, should they? Or our relationship with Jesus. Even inside the church, it's not the first thing you see in marriage. Can we or should we illustrate this signpost better? So when we look at a Christian marriage, should it be a more obvious signpost to our relationship with Jesus?
So certainly those of us who are married should work on maintaining good quality signposts that point effectively. But I don't think that means we should expect these particular signposts to do all the work on their own. People receive the gospel of Jesus through words and deeds together. It's like if you spend all day, every day, giving to the poor, no one's going to look at that and immediately go, oh, Jesus is Lord who saves me from my sins. But those good works can fit together with the spoken message about Jesus and his amazing generosity. Marriage is a way of living out and illustrating an aspect of the gospel in a way that can make the spoken message intelligible. So you hope that people see marriages and realise that the destiny of two people can be deeply intertwined. And you'd hope people look at a Christian marriage and see someone in a stronger position, using that position to be a servant. And so then when they hear a message about Jesus using his position of strength to be an amazing servant, that idea is comprehensible and believable because of the context it's heard in. So I think it's fine that the marriage signpost doesn't get people all the way there. It's part of a broader picture that includes words.
So when someone comes to see Jesus and his love for his people, they might go, oh, that's in some way reflected in a Christian marriage.
That's an idea that I've seen.
Yes.
Maybe subconsciously.
Yeah. Last one on the signpost. If you said that in the sermon marriage was just a signpost or only a signpost, if it's only a signpost, then does that mean marriage has very little value now? Is it only a sign? Is it valuable only because it points to something else, or does it still have inherent value now?
Short answer is no. I did say that marriage is only a signpost, and by that I mean it's not the ultimate gift. It's not the place we should look for ultimate fulfillment. And that's a message to remember for those who are unmarried, and for those who are in happy marriages, and for those who are in difficult marriages. It's not the ultimate blessing. It points to the ultimate blessing, which is union with Christ. So I did want to tone down our expectations of marriage.
Yeah, that's really helpful, because if you put all your hopes and dreams into your marriage, then when it doesn't live up to that, then we can be crushed. Whereas actually we should be putting our hopes and dreams in Jesus and that relationship instead.
So yeah, I wanted to tone down expectations, but not to tone down the dignity and the value of marriage as a good gift of God, and which gives us good benefits as we live in his world. It actually opens up a much bigger question in ethics about the relationship of this world to the world to come. If there's a whole new world coming, does that mean that everything in this world is kind of meaningless in light of that? And if the world to come was completely cut off from this world, then maybe it would be meaningless. Maybe if the world to come was a purely spiritual thing, completely different to this material world, then the stuff we do in this material world would be kind of meaningless. But that's not how it is. The new creation has begun with the resurrection of Jesus. There's a lovely quote that says, his resurrection body is the first cell of the new creation. And so that creates this connection point between this world and the world to come. Signals that this world, though it's not eternal, it's still got dignity and meaning and value. And so the marriages that we experience in this world still have dignity and value and meaning and benefits, while at the same time pointing beyond themselves.
Yeah, very, very helpful. Thank you very much for answering those questions, Tom. One more thing though, as you may have noticed, as you might be noticing all around North Epping, there have been internet issues through the week and even here at church, so we missed out on some of the live stream action from Sunday. We got the sermon from the morning recorded fine in the end, but for the evening the live stream cut out. I think you were just saying something like, and finally, and then it just snapped off. So could you give us that last little bit of the night church talk. It's kind of where you get into the application of for people who are married, people who are single, people who are dating. That would be good to capture so that people can rewatch or watch for the first time if they missed it. Before you do that, thanks for sending your questions through. Please keep sending your questions throughout the series, and we'll keep doing question times like this after each talk. But yes, take us away with the end of your sermon, Tom.
When a preacher says finally, they may still have 30 minutes to go. You never really know. Don't trust the word finally. Anyway, at the point where the live stream cut out, I was just getting into saying a few things to people who are unmarried but looking to get married. And then after that, a few concluding remarks, finally. If you're someone who's unmarried but looking to get married, here are some suggestions in light of what we've seen about the purpose of marriage and the purpose of sex. First one is to look for a partner who can help you to build a good signpost. And that will mean find someone who's a Christian, who shares this view that marriage is a signpost. Finding a Christian, I'd say, is important. But let me also say, finding exactly the right Christian, less important. Less important. There is, of course, such a thing as a bad match of a combination of personalities that just turns out not to work. And breaking up a dating relationship, it's a perfectly legitimate thing to do. It hurts, but you're not wronging anyone. I want to say that overall, being the right person is much more important than finding the right person. Second suggestion, recognise the distinction between physical affection and sexual intimacy. Physical affection is appropriate to a dating relationship. Sexual intimacy isn't. Where is that line? I was reading something where a university professor was asked about this question by two of his students who were a couple. And he said to them something like, if it's something you wouldn't be comfortable doing on the front steps of the university library, then don't do it in private. And so sure enough, the next day he saw this couple standing on the steps of the library kissing passionately. So maybe that's a helpful framework to think about. I do want to say, don't hesitate to draw some wise boundaries for yourselves. A dating couple I used to know decided that they wouldn't be alone together in a house where no one else was home. And you might immediately go, isn't that a bit legalistic? And it would be legalism if they turned this into a rule for everyone to judge other people by. But it wasn't that. It was just some wisdom that they decided was a good idea for them. Now, the world around us is never going to give us good advice on these things. The world around us has a different perspective on the whole thing. So do go ahead and set up your own wise boundaries. Don't expect others to do that for you. So now it is finally time to finish up the sermon. Right back at the beginning of the talk, I acknowledged that this can be an awkward topic. And the awkwardness doesn't just come from prudish sensibilities. It also comes from the awareness of sins we've committed in this area, or the memory of sins that have been committed against us. Sex is powerful. It can be used for great good and great harm. And so as we close, I want to point out that if you are a Christian believer, male, female, married, unmarried, gay, straight, whatever, you have the ultimate husband in Christ. A husband who is like you, but also different. A husband who found himself in a stronger position, but used that position of strength to become the ultimate servant. A husband who went to the cross to take away your guilt and your shame. The rightful penalty for whatever you've done, he's taken that on himself. The humiliation of whatever's been done to you, he's taken that on himself. And so as Christians, we can sing in anticipation those words from Revelation 19 that we looked at earlier in the talk. Let us rejoice and be glad and give him glory, for the wedding of the Lamb has come, and his bride has made herself ready. Fine linen, bright and clean, was given her to wear.